Welcome back to another episode of Shelly's Game Kitchen. Each episode I try and make game a little bit more approachable with some unique recipes and also some different techniques to kind of help you enjoy cooking this very healthy and lean protein. So keep watching as I bring the forest to your table. So what I'm going to prepare for you today is a very unique dish. We're going to do antelope shank. So I have one shank here off of an antelope, and it's right about here on the leg of an animal. And so what I'm going to do is slow braise that in some red wine and stock with a little mirepoix, and I'm going to serve it with garlic mashed potatoes and roasted broccoli. So keep watching, and we're going to have some really good fun food for you to enjoy today. Montana Flavor to Savor. We've spent a decade creating the best flavors with all natural ingredients, gluten-free, with no fillers or no preservatives. You can find the best flavors at Montana Flavor to Savor. Visit our website at www.mtflavortosavor.com. With an explosion of flavor that tantalizes your taste buds, there's only one way to experience the last best taste of Montana, and that's with Montana Flavor to Savor seasonings. Get yours today. So let's get started with our antelope shank. The one thing that you're going to need is a really good Dutch oven that you can do your searing off of and have a really heavy lid. So I've got that all set. Now I just want to season up my shank with some steak seasoning. And I'm going to do, what I did on my shank is I actually took a lot of the silvering already off. But we're slow roasting this in the oven, so a lot of that, the tendons and the silvering will dissolve while we're slow cooking it in the oven. But I like to get a nice sear, so I take off as much as I can on the outside so my meat is really touching the pan and getting a nice sear. So let's just get a good coat. And I'm gonna do that on all sides. And then got my pan already coming up to temp. I'm just gonna add some grapeseed oil to the pan. And then we're gonna get this in there. And this is one of those wonderful things because when you're doing it on with the bone in, as it roasts in the oven, that marrow is gonna release, and we're gonna add that into our sauce when we make our own natural gravy from this. So when we're ready to get that all good and seared, feels pretty hot to me. I'm just gonna rinse this off really quick. So as that sears away, we're gonna get a nice coating on each side. And I'm gonna have my oven at 300 degrees. So once this gets all done, we're gonna sear it on each side, take it out of the pan, and then we're gonna sear off our mirepoix and get all of our ingredients ready for the sauce. So it's just gonna cook away for a couple of minutes on here. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is get ready to flip this over. I can kind of think that we got a nice sear on the one side. We wanna continue that on the other side. And we're just gonna let that cook for another couple of minutes, get a good sear. So I think we've got a nice sear on here, so let's take it out of our pan and get our rest of our ingredients going. So I'm just going to immediately go right back in to that hot pan with all of my mirepoix. So I've got onions and actually triple colored carrots and celery. So your mirepoix is 2 parts onion, 1 part carrot, and 1 part celery. And that's what we're working on today. And anytime you're gonna add, again, we're building layers of flavor, so we gotta season each layer. And I'm just gonna use a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And I'm just gonna get this to where it's kind of translucent. I'm not gonna try and get color on it because once these cook down, we're gonna put our antelope shank back on the top of this mirepoix after it softens up a bit. And then in the end, when we bring it all back out, I'll again remove the shank, and then all of these vegetables will be soft, and we're gonna fuzz those up with an immersion blender, and that's gonna be our sauce. It's gonna be delicious. It's gonna have all of the roasted meats and the marrow from that shank in there. So I'm just gonna let that cook for a couple of minutes and let those get nice and softened. Okay, so it really looks like our mirepoix is softened good now. And I'm gonna add the couple more ingredients. I've got some tomato paste, and I really kind of wanna toast that off in there. So that's why I'm adding it now. And I'm also gonna do just a little bit of Dijon. So, you know that whole saying, how things that grow together go together? So mustard grows in the wild, and it helps bring out some of those natural flavors in game meat. I love Dijon when I'm cooking game. So I'm just gonna kind of stir that in there and kind of get those combined and toasted. And pan's getting a little warm, so need to grab a hot pad. All right, so now you can kind of tell that the tomato paste has gotten a little browned, and now I'm gonna go in with the red wine and I'm gonna deglaze and get all of those wonderful bits up from searing off the meat. Just really want to get in there and scrape up all of those little fronds that are on the bottom of the pan. And then I'm just going to let that kind of reduce a little bit so we cook off some of that wine, and then I'm going to hit it with some stock and then put everything back in. When you're braising, you want to have that liquid to be about halfway up on your main ingredient, which in this case is the antelope shank. So antelope is kind of a prairie animal. So I'm in the mountains, and where I live, I am more in the mountains. So when my husband has to harvest antelope, he actually has to travel to the other part of the state to get the antelope off of the prairies. But it's very, very tender, it's mild, it's a beautiful meat. I absolutely love antelope. And I know if you've watched some of my other episodes, I have cooked with the antelope before. So, all right, let's reduce down a little bit, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of stock for now and get that back up to temp. And if I need to add more after I add my shank back in, if I need to add more to bring the liquid level up, I'll do that then. But let's just get these back up to temp, let that boil, and then add everything in, and then it goes in the oven. So now we've got that simmering just a little bit, and I'm gonna add just a little bit of herbs. So I'm actually gonna use some of my herb seasoning in here, and we're just gonna add a little bit more to this layer, because remember I added that liquid and I haven't seasoned it yet. And let's add our antelope shank back in, and any resting juices, you want to just keep adding that right back in there. Beautiful. And I think that's plenty of liquid. So now what I'm going to do is shut this off, put the lid on it nice and tight, and then we're going to put the whole thing in the oven. So that's at 300 degrees, and we're gonna leave it alone for about 2.5, maybe 3 hours. You're gonna take it out and test it by seeing if the meat flakes away easily with the fork. And then we'll come back and do our sides and get ready to plate. So it smells really good in here because that antelope shank is ready to come out of the oven. And while we were away, I actually put the broccoli in there. I just toasted it with a little bit of olive oil and some of my herb seasoning and then roasted it. So I'm gonna bring both of those out of the oven now. Yes. I'm gonna put that right here. And then we've got some nice char on my broccoli. That's perfect. I love a little bit of char on my broccoli, so it just adds another element. And then I also went ahead and made the mashed potatoes with a little heavy cream and butter and tasted that for salt. But I always cook my potatoes in salted water. Again, so you don't have to season so much at the end. Now let's take off this lid and get the aromas going. Oh, yes. So when it was about 3/4 of the way done, I actually took everything out and buzzed with an immersion blender all of the mirepoix and made a beautiful sauce. So let's just go ahead and plate. I'm gonna start with some of those beautiful mashed potatoes. And I'm just gonna do a little dollop in the middle here and plate around it. And I'm gonna cut off one of those little pieces. And this is a beautiful antelope shank. So it's like a roast, but so much more rich because the marrow, when you cook it with the bone, the marrow comes out of that. It makes it just so much better. And I'm just gonna add some of that sauce on there, as well as, let's get some of our broccoli around. I think I'm just gonna do that. Perfect. And I like to just kind of dollop those around on my potatoes and get a nice pretty look. Perfect. It wasn't too hot. And just finish with a little fresh parsley. So there you have my antelope shank over mashed potatoes with roasted broccoli. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Shelly's Game Kitchen. I really enjoyed cooking one of my signature dishes for you today. It was antelope shank, slow braised, and I used the mirepoix and actually reduced it down into a sauce by pureeing all of those vegetables with the broth and the red wine as it reduced. And then I served it over mashed potatoes with roasted broccoli. I hope you enjoy it and cook it for yourself and your family because trust me, it's delicious. If you want to catch me on social media, I'm Chef Shelly Meyer. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. And then you can get my spices at www.mtflavortosavor.com. Thank you so much, and tune in next time while I continue to bring you Forest to the Table.